So here's the thing. I have taken 2 full-blown knife seminars, one by this guy, one by Ryan Hoover, and I have yet to learn a single knife disarm. I don't know if this is just because they are the equivalent of wrist locks and they're just not extremely effective, or it has to be like the right time, right place type thing. Or, now I didn't ask that many questions when I was here. I asked Ryan a shit ton because like by that point I've already taken it all in. So I took all my questions for you and just threw it at his way. And his response initially was focus more on like accidental disarms rather than trying to focus on pure disarms.
Yes.
So what is your view on that?
I would like to point out that when we started the entire weekend training by saying we don't do disarms in this program, I would imagine that hopefully you wouldn't ask about disarms.
No, I'm gonna ask.
No, it's not that we don't address them.
It's one of those things that I see, like same thing with like gun training. Anytime it comes to like weapon, well, why don't you just take it out and just pull it back, and I could just do this and that, and it's the same thing of why don't I just punch you? Like if you're holding a knife, why don't I just grab and punch? But
anybody who says just has no idea what they're talking about.
Correct. Just and it's understanding that your mind's going in a million different ways. Yes. If I'm dealing with a big guy, now here's my opinion, right?
Sure.
Wrist locks work if applied correctly. They suck. Can you hit them in live scenarios when people are giving you full resistance moving around? Maybe.
Depends on training, yeah.
Depends on training. Now, with all the knife drills I've done with you, I did with him, the ones that we're going to do this weekend, I am like zoned in on just fucking controlling you and isolating you and trying to just deal with the situation that you having the knife and me trying to do, especially this or like here and trying to like peel this stuff out. I just don't see it. So my question is, do you have disarms that you would show, or how would you approach disarms?
Yeah, it's a legitimate question, and we get this a lot with the KCC program, like, oh, what about entries, what about disarms? And in the KCC program, we say like, look, that's not what we do with this program.
Right.
However, KCC is one branch of what it is that I do. Here at Endeavor in the Krav Maga program, like obviously we look at all encompassing for everything. KCC is very specific. How do you control and deal with the entanglement? So that's why I joke around in the seminars. I usually tell people like, don't ask me about entries or disarms, talk about it later over some drinks, because that's not what this program is. However, we do have disarms, things like that. I would ask a couple of questions, okay? The first question I would ask right out of the gate is, remember, I guess it's not really a question, it's more of a concept. But remember, the question to think about is, why do I need the knife?
Correct.
Right? Now, in a gun situation, I want to remove the gun from your hands, because if I'm going to turn and run, it is a projectile and you can still utilize it, assuming that the mag hasn't dropped out, the gun's functional, and all that kind of fun stuff. But you have a chance of manipulating the firearm, getting it back into action, and making a shot. So obviously I want to take that away from you, preferably make sure you don't have it, preferably make sure nobody else has it, and then deal with it, right? In the knife, that might not be the case, right? So I can just turn and run. So like, why am I worrying so much about the disarm? That's question number one. So what are the contexts in which I may need to actually own the knife and take the knife away, right? And there are some. So that's the other thing too, like I can go out and say like, don't worry about that stuff. But reality of it is there are circumstances where maybe I do need to take the knife away, or at least make sure it's not clearly in your hand. Right. Okay, cool. So situations where I can't escape, right? And I can't control you, just down into it. Situations where, like we find ourselves in a deep entanglement. Maybe I'm on the bottom and it's like we've come to a stalemate, but I'm not able to advance position. You're not really able to advance position. And right now you're still kind of winning because you have a knife in your hand.
I'm gonna try to take it out.
Exactly. Right. Like, okay, maybe I can do something to break the wrist or something like that. So that's one thing I want people to start looking at is to survive a knife attack. In those cases, do I need to remove the knife? Right. No, I need to remove myself from the knife, or remove your ability to utilize the knife.
Because I also feel if I'm trying to disarm it, I'm potentially putting myself at more risk by trying to handle the knife rather than I can control your shoulder. I can control the whole limb rather than trying to focus on that pinpoint of the blade.
Yeah, and so then the next thing that I would say after we start saying like, okay, like what are the actual contexts in which you would need to take the knife away, is that I would look at it essentially taking from jiu-jitsu, which is position before submission. If you can't control in any way, shape, or form, then you sure as shit are not going to do a disarm.
Right.
So that's why anybody who's worth their salt in the world teaching knife defense focuses on the majority control element, because that's what matters first and foremost. Okay, so there you go. There's your first initial. All right, now, are there disarms? Sure, right?
Show me something.
Yeah,
that I can.
You're right. Everybody's
share
like, I
with
hate
the people.
concept videos of you guys just talking to each other. Like, do something.
Show
fun.
me a technique.
That's that meme with the dude poking him with a stick. It's like, do something.
Yeah.
So are there things there? Yes. So you can look at like breaking mechanics and things like that. So incidental defense, kind of like what Ryan was talking about, is huge, right? Like if I do have an outside 2-on-1 and like through the struggle, let's say I like take a big pop and wham and rip, and during that like your elbow pops and it sends a shiver down your throat, boom, incidental defense. Disarm, hands down, awesome, fantastic.
He talked a lot about like pinning the shin or like pinning
to
the
the
wrist
floor
and stuff.
Yeah,
exactly. All
so
that stuff.
I put you on the ground, even just with a basic snap down, and your knuckles blast into the concrete. Boom! Right now, maybe the hand's broken, hand come grounded, knife goes flying.
Right.
Thumbs up, awesome. Right. So that's from a disarm perspective. That's where like pinning shit to the ground, bashing it into things, and mutilating the limb. That's where I would start with everybody. You want a good disarm, break the arm. Right? Like snap this. Not like straight armbar takedown in my opinion. But like if I have this 2-on-1, I'm gonna rip and come back to control. Rip, boom, come back to control. Break the limb, however that is. Right? Rip them down to the floor. So that would be like piece number 1. Piece number 2, another element of it is stop your ability to hold on to it by knocking you fucking unconscious, right? So if I can stretch you, right? So like the, boom, put them down on the ground, stretch them out, shin ride them. Now I'm at this crossroad, which is, do I go back here and focus on this?
Right.
Or do I just...
Well, and this is where you get like the questions, like, right, like, okay, the guy's subdued, you got control, peel the knife out. Like, why?
Why
at this point?
This is
ain't
still a
going
threat.
anywhere.
Well, it may.
But
let's hope it's not going anywhere.
correct. It's difficult.
It's difficult. Yeah, it's.
I'm just
I
not,
have
I'm
some
not,
semblance
I'm not
of
in a
control.
position to really do much from here.
I'm in some semblance of control, so like I'm gonna start pushing your head away, and then I'm gonna start beating the living crap out of you, hoping that you either let go of the blade or I can knock you unconscious in some form or fashion to take that away. I can also, in this position, like where we have space and you're up, right? I could be shoving this way, and now I can bust down through the elbow. So again, it comes down to like mutilate the limb, which is what's holding on to it, or knock them unconscious, choke them out, kill them potentially, so that their brain doesn't work anymore. Okay, that to me is
Those are disarms.
99.9999999% of disarms. In my opinion, that's where things should be focused at.
Right.
Now, is there potential to hit things like wrist locks? Are there opportunities to like grab the knife and break it out of it? Yes, and I think anybody who says otherwise is batshit crazy. And they're trying to think, okay, maybe not batshit crazy, but they're trying to think rationally in an irrational, violent encounter. Right? So you think about certain elements where like, if we're fighting over this, even if we're on the ground, if we're fighting over this and like I lose position for a minute and you start to stab that back towards me and I do this and grab onto it, a rational person would say, oh, I'm cutting my hand, ouch, I'm gonna let go.
I would look at it as like you're saving your life.
Right, in this case, to look at it and go like, don't ever grab onto the blade, it's like, well, getting stabbed in the face versus having my hand kind of jacked up in this case, I'm gonna take one over the other.
Yeah.
So to say that I can't grab onto the blade, yes, I'm gonna have damage from it, right?
Yeah.
And then pry and maybe pull it out of the hand or pin it up against something and do things like that. Like in a case where it's like, that was the best option in the moment that I could think of, absolutely, right? So that's where you get into like when you learn like Kali and things like that. And again, like I've done Balintawak Kali, I spent some time doing martial blade concepts, great programs to learn about, knife stuff and things like that. But you start getting into like, they'll talk specifically like grab like this, specifically like this, so that I'm not getting cut into that, right? So I'm grabbing the blade like this and I'm, peeling and breaking this direction. And all that stuff's great, but you understand that the high level of fine motor movement it takes for me to purposely palm a blade in a very specific way so that maybe I don't get cut, and then you understand that things degrade.
Right.
Well, this tactic that is taught on a high level to peel away and break just becomes this under stress, but the mechanics are still there. I could still grab and break and pull.
Right.
I'm just going to have a crap ton of stitches afterwards and probably some jacked up fingers in the hand.
Yeah.
So realistically, that's there. Disarms like using the floor to create wrist locks, using third leverage points to create wrist locks. I'm a fan of that. Like if I'm here in the outside 2-on-1 and you want to start reestablishing position and you start to put your knuckles back into the floor and I punch,
Oh yeah.
right, and roll, and now look at chest pressure down on the elbow to break that open to go to clear, it's perfectly fine. But what is that? That's like, again, the guy behind the camera is better at this than we are. right? But that is basic wrist lock, right? Same stuff you'd see in like Krav Maga. I say that because I'm a Krav Maga guy. I'm allowed to make fun, right? And in Krav Maga, when you go into those basics, but it's there,
right?
You know what I mean? If we're fighting a little more like dismantled, like up top, you know, and like we find like positions into this, okay? If I have big enough hands, right? And that's not me, by the way, but if I'm somebody that has big enough hands and I can like encompass your wrist and I'm stronger than you and break it up in all freaking day. Again, like I could pull these things off, and it's understandable to think that way too, because if you look at it, if you are bigger than me and I am the bad guy, I might level the playing field by thinking I'm gonna stab the hell out of this guy.
Right.
So to also say that like grip wouldn't come into it. Now, do I think it is realistic for most people to make a block, get a hold of an arm and pull this off to like pull somebody down the floor? No, right? However, somebody that's spent 12, 15, 20 years against somebody that's a crap attacker,
Maybe.
You know what I mean? Like that's the thing we see a lot of times. If you look at crimes, attacks of passion, they're not always insanely talented.
Right.
They're afraid of the knife, so it makes them do this type stuff. But if they had just a little going this way, in cases, not all of them, but in a lot of cases that you watch, they're not insanely talented. There's a video we posted forever ago, the t-shirt where we did a whole shirt wrap thing on it. And that dude was not talented. He wasn't strong. He wasn't athletic.
No, he had
he
no
just
idea
was
what he was
holding on.
doing.
And this guy was definitely afraid of a knife, which he should be. Right?
Everyone
The kid in the high school in the hallway.
Yes.
We just posted that one the other day, right? The dude with the attack, he had no idea what he was doing. He didn't even pick the right blade to do any damage with it. So it's like, can things happen? Sure.
Right.
But in the same exact regard, is it likely, should I be spending the majority of my training time learning this
compared to
learning this, learning this,
Right.
learning this? In my opinion, no. In my opinion, it's learn to control, learn to hit, make distance, get the hell out of there, don't even deal with it.
Yeah.
If I have to deal with it, bash it against stuff to break the hand and open it, mutilate the arm, break the elbow,
Learn
knock
how
them
to do the
unconscious.
disarms where you're not physically
Exactly.
doing the disarms.
And then
Force it.
if you're gonna stick around long enough, like I've been doing this 15 years, you've obviously been doing it a very long time as far as self-defense goes, like yeah, then you can start doing shit. But early on, like if you're gonna go take a seminar, if somebody's gonna stand in front of you, like we do it 12 hours tops on our KCC stuff, what is the most important thing for anybody to learn in that? It sure as hell is not a wrist lock, it's not a basic disarm.
Control and
So-
isolate first.
Yes. So smash into things, break the arm, knock them unconscious, and then start looking at crazy, overarching, I have no other choice but to deal with this. Okay, cool. Then you can go ahead and do it.
So there you have it. See, disarms are stupid. Just control and isolate.